medicine path. And today we have a very interesting topic of a doula, death doula, a matter of fact. And we have Catherine Durkin today, and she'll explain a little bit about what she does, what brought her to this path, and who she is. So, hey, Catherine, how are you today?
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
No problem at all. Let's listen. Let's talk about what you do, death doula, or a
Right.
doula in general.
Yeah, so I'm an end-of-life doula. I think that this is a job that many people are familiar with, or work that many people are familiar with, but they might not be familiar with the title. So for a long time, most families have somebody that they kind of go to, or maybe friends have somebody that they go to when they receive a tough diagnosis, or they're dealing with a terminal illness. And if a doctor says, well, it's time to get your affairs in order, some people have no idea what that means.
Right.
So they have somebody that they call. I've been that role in my family and my friends for a long time. I was raised Irish Catholic, so I was at my first last rites when I was about 5.
Mm-hmm.
And the Irish have a very distinct relationship with death. You surround the dying person with a lot of love and a lot of stories and a lot of tears and a lot of laughter and some drinks. And that carries that person through to transition. We take care of the body afterwards. It's a very normal, healthy aspect. Death is a part of life. So I carried that with me. I'm not Catholic anymore, but I'm always going to be Irish. So I took that with me into other groups. And as I got older, it transitioned to a volunteer position with 2 different hospice groups in Tampa, where I'm from. And again, just surrounding the dying person with a lot of love, with some education beforehand so they know what to expect. Helping to reduce fear and anxiety, helping to reduce suffering, physical suffering, as well as emotional and spiritual suffering. And so when I was looking for a career change during the pandemic, somebody said to me, you're already doing this. It's called doula work. And why don't you go back? And I mean, as we all know, hospice trains you extensively. But she said, go back to school and really consider this as, your calling. And it really was. So I went to the University of Vermont. I got trained as an end-of-life doula. I joined National End-of-Life Doula Alliance, which promotes best practices amongst doulas in this country, and started my private practice. And it's just been a wonderful way to help support people during this, what I believe is just a sacred time in their life.
Right. It is pretty sacred because we talked a little bit before this conversation, before we got on, and we talked about our 2 things that we experience is death, life and death. And most of us really, really fear death. And, coming to the medicine is one thing that I actually feel that I experienced death on a DFT experience. And in my family, death has been talked about a lot. But a lot of people aren't comforted with death. So how do you go ahead and comfort people with the death aspect?
Well, I think it's important first to kind of, a doula does not walk into any situation trying to fix things. We don't even guide. We listen and we support. That's our job. And so the first thing we need to do is kind of talk about why somebody has anxiety around dying and death. And this can be done before a diagnosis is even happening. So there are lots of reasons why people feel anxiety, right? It could be because as a society, we're not encouraged to talk about it. We're not encouraged to learn about the dying process. And that mystery, that kind of taboo around the topic makes it frightening.
Right.
There's also just, lots of people who are very involved in hospice or with the dying are also scared, even though they know all the things that surrounds it. Well, that might be because they've witnessed the death of somebody that seemed frightening, that seemed scary. Maybe they saw their grandparents suffering and that scares the heck out of them.
Right.
We talk about that. Some people are just afraid because it's mysterious, right? We don't really know for sure what happens. And so there's an element there that's going to make anybody kind of nervous because we don't know what's going to happen for sure. So I think all of that kind of comes into play. And when we talk through our fears, a lot of times that can reduce anxiety. But then there are all other ways. Once I hear from somebody what they want to do with the rest of their life, what their goals are, what their fears are, well, then we can kind of talk, after listening to them, we can kind of talk about ways that they can reduce their anxiety if that's what they want to do. We talk about, what does a good death look like to you? It's different for everybody. So once they kind of let me know what it is they're looking for, we can talk about different ways to reduce anxiety and not only have a better death, but have a better life, living without that constant fear.
Can we talk about that for a second? Can we ask that question? What do people, I mean, what do people look for? What is the answer to that question most of the time? What are people looking for as a good death?
Well, gosh, a
Or is
lot
it
of
hard to
people,
say?
say that a good death means dying at home.
Hmm.
Oftentimes my clients will say that a good death means telling somebody they're sorry, telling somebody they love them, or telling somebody that they forgive them.
So it's basically all the things we should be doing every single day of our lives,
Well, there are things we can do right
right?
now while we're alive to make it better down the road. People
Right.
are also afraid, there's a real fear of physical suffering.
Hmm.
So we talk about that. What can the medical team do? Suffering at end of life is not something we have to endure. There
Hmm.
are plans in place, palliative care physicians, hospice teams that can actually help with regards to that, especially if they're brought on board earlier rather than later. So it's really important for doulas to listen, because everybody has a different idea. Some people think a good death just means being comfortable and they don't care where they are. So I can't promise much. The only thing that I can guarantee for my clients is that I'll be with them.
Yeah.
I'm there to hold space, I'm there to support, and I'm there to walk them home. And so I can guarantee that whatever they go through, they will not do it by themselves. And so that's really important. And then if they really do want to work through and limit the suffering that they feel emotionally or spiritually, well, we have a toolbox filled with some things that studies have shown, my experience have shown, that work in reducing that anxiety. So we give some of them a try.
Yeah, that is such an interesting topic, about death. And you talk about only like when somebody is diagnosed with something, but how about if somebody wants to feel what death is about before they're diagnosed? Can we do
Yeah,
that?
yeah, that's a great idea. And so um, I encourage that. So plant medicine is a really great way to experience ego death sometimes,
Mhm.
to experience whatever it is we're supposed to experience, right? And part of that can lead to reduced anxiety around death. And so I encourage people to give that a try. If it seems like the right fit, if it seems like it's calling to you, maybe we should listen to that and explore it a little bit deeper. And that's challenging, right? Because people have fear wrapped up in that. It's
Yeah.
fear of the unknown. It might be illegal in some places. I work with Diaspora Psychedelic Society, where it's legal in Jamaica. And so
Right.
we have retreats where people go and they feel a little bit more comfortable there, right? Because it's legal, it's safe, and then they know somebody's kind of sitting with them, and then they can do a deep dive and explore without that worry or fear. I also work with some just top-notch therapists in this country who work with clients underground, to provide that kind of medicine for them. And I'm just there simply in the name of harm reduction to be a trip sitter. Trip sitting is similar to doula work in that we're not guides. We're not there to provide any answers. We're there to hold space, to help integrate after the experience and kind of find out how it can reduce anxiety and lead to a better life and death. Um, but it's so encouraging to watch people who really are called to plant medicine in a variety of different ways,
Right.
and you can witness some miraculous interventions that help allow them to maybe work through some trauma. Maybe it helps them work through some fears, and then they can integrate that into their life to benefit from it.
Absolutely. Can you brush on a little bit of that retreat you have in Jamaica? Can you touch on that a little bit, or is that
Yeah, so
something?
we have retreats for people, and again, it's an end of life retreat
Yes.
because we specifically are talking about end of life issues. And
Hmm.
you're there with me, a death doula. So we're going to talk about these things and we're going to kind of hopefully work through them over the course of a week. But you don't need a diagnosis to come. A lot of us have fear of death from the time that we realize death is a thing, right? So you don't have to wait until the end to kind of explore this and maybe work through it. A lot of people, especially younger people, want to have a different relationship with death than their parents.
Hmm.
And they have to take care of aging parents. So they want to do it in a way that's mindful and holistic. And so come on down to Jamaica and join us. We also have training programs for end-of-life doulas who want to incorporate plant medicine because it can be such a help for people at end of life. So they want to make it a part of their practice. So they can come down to Jamaica and join us too.
I love that. That's awesome. And the underground is starting to get less underground just because of people like you. I mean, these medicines used under the right ramifications with the proper set and settings are probably some of the most powerful medicines for mental health that you'll ever use. Just used properly and with the right intentions. So
Yeah, I
we
agree.
have
So
to,
yeah, let's get it out. Let's get out of all the cobwebs and the dark
yeah,
corners and let's talk about it more.
because we have to start somewhere, and these are just catalysts. These medicines are just absolute catalysts, and they just get you there. But there's actually a process to all these medicines, and that's what we try to do here to inform people. But what you do and what other people do in this space is what we need, this information. And death is very mysterious. And death, we should accept death with a little more dignity, I guess. And it's almost a beautiful thing because that's what, I mean, that's what we're looking forward to, aren't we? I mean, not looking forward to also, but that's our goal. I mean, we're going to die, so we should die gracefully.
Yeah, I mean, and that looks different for different people. There are some people who, have religious convictions, and they really think that, they think they know what's going to happen after they die. That can give them comfort. There are other people who kind of embrace the mystery of it. I think it's comforting to know that people who have had clinical deaths and then were resuscitated and brought back have overwhelmingly positive experiences to talk about. So the vast majority of these people die and feel bliss, they feel comfort, they feel overwhelming amounts of love, and they don't want to come back. And so that must tell you something.
It,
That,
it must. It must. And I don't know what it is, but is that a DMT release? Is it your brain? Is it, I don't know, but it's something. I mean,
yes.
it's been documented just so many times with these near-death experiences, and these same visions, these same things we see, even on these deep psychedelic journeys. It's all the same thing. It's the
It's
same
very
bliss.
similar. Yeah,
Hmm.
the studies show that they're having the same kinds of experiences. And I'll tell you another thing that's kind of comforting. At the end of life, about 80 to 90% of us will experience something called near-death awareness. And this is when a lot of people say, oh, they're talking to the angels. But somebody is having a visit and they get a visit from somebody. 9 times out of 10, it's a relative or a loved one that's already deceased, but they come and they visit the person who's dying and they provide comfort, love. They let them know they won't be alone. Now, sometimes if you're in the room with a loved one who's dying and they are seeing or talking to somebody that you can't see or hear, it can be alarming for the loved one.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we talk about in preparing for the dying process is to allow your loved one to experience this, to be okay with it. And then when they come back and they're lucid and they're back in the room with you, ask them if they can tell you about it. Most of the time, these visits provide comfort, and they provide a lot. The person experiencing them feels a lot of love, knowing that they won't be alone, that they'll have loved ones with them, guiding them through this transition. But like a bad trip, sometimes it can be alarming. So I have found that helping people by reminding them what we would before a bad trip it's very similar. Be open to whatever it is you're supposed to learn. If you see stairs, climb them. If you see a door, open it. If something scares you, don't run. Turn around and face it and say, what are you here to teach me? And so far, that really helps people. Like I said, most of the visits are positive, but when they're a little alarming, I have found the same kinds of tips for a good psychedelic experience is similar to the kinds of tips for a good near-death experience as well.
I guess what happens at the end of the day is we find beauty in that. And that beauty is something that we find comfort in. Can you say that's the case, maybe?
Yeah, I think a lot of these experiences can help people reduce their anxiety. Learning how to meditate is a very successful way to just kind of be here in the now and to be mindful. So that's something that if somebody wants to reduce their anxiety and experience a more joyful death, you've got these options. You've got actions that we can take, saying I'm sorry, saying I love you, saying I forgive you. We can meditate. We can bring in plant medicine. We can just kind of talk through our fears, get more educated about the dying process, talk about how people have experienced it, who've then come back and told us what it's like. All of this combined together can help people reduce their anxiety in such a way that their life is made better because they're not worried constantly about this, and their death is experienced with more joy because they're not worried, because they know they have somebody there who will support them. They have loved ones, even folks whose family isn't nearby. There's no evidence that we die alone. So that information can be very empowering and also very helpful for people who aren't used to talking about it.
Right. And another thing, this might be an off the wall question, but it's a question I have because I've seen it happen so many times. If you're married for a long time or you have a loved one for a long time and that loved one seems to die, why does the process of the second one that's not dead yet happen so quickly? I've seen it all the time happen when you're married so long or with somebody so long. The other one that could have no health problems, but as soon as that loved one dies, the other one seems to go right along really quickly afterwards. Is there some kind of theory to that or something? But it happens a lot.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think there's some truth to the idea of dying of a broken heart. I think that's been talked about since the beginning of time. And I think, I mean, if we can make ourselves sick, we can, that eventually is what's going to happen. If somebody finds that the love of their life is gone, some people really are able to go on. The happiest couples, somebody passes away and the other one, finds another loved one quickly after that. But it can go the other way too. Somebody can just kind of give up and die of heartbreak. Yeah.
I guess it's that loneliness and that loss. And what a great subject today. What a great conversation.
I want to make something clear because so many people kind of come to a doula and they want a lot. They want to kind of, they want to kind of be cured of death anxiety. I've often said a doula doesn't walk into a room and fix anything. The only thing I can guarantee is that you won't be alone. You won't go through this journey by yourself. So I can help people with, like I said, I have a toolbox. I have lots of things in there that help people kind of make amends and really, I mean, I have simple requests too. Like, I want to see my granddaughter get married. We have to put on a wedding in this room next week because I want to see her get married before I die. That's very simple. There are
Yeah.
other things that are a little bit more complicated, but when we work through them, all I can say is that I guarantee you, you won't be alone. And I'm going to provide that non-judgmental support and guide and love through the end. And that's what I can do. That's about all I can do. The rest is just kind of, encouraging where I can and supporting where I can.
Well, I think in the Western world and just our Western world society, we all are looking for this quick fix of something that takes a lot of work. I mean, we're all programs of this program, and we have to deprogram that program, and that's all it is. And it's going to take time. It takes a lot of time. And what you do is just, I never really heard about this, even on my plant medicine journey since I've been on this for a while. I just never heard about a doula, but in the last few months, we've been hearing a lot more about them. And I'm really glad we had you on today because I really think death and life and birth is such an important topic. And that's why we're here. And
It is.
to
Yeah,
fear
it's
these things,
very important.
to understand them and not fear them so much.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I tell my clients all the time, there's a whole lot we cannot control. What happens to us often is beyond our control,
Right.
but we can control how we react to it. We can control how we handle it. And I again, part of my work is empowering people, letting them know that they have more agency than they ever realized. So many people, at end of life, wait until they're surrounded by family, they're surrounded by friends, and they wait for their friends and family to leave, and then they die. That indicates we have some control. So many clients, so many hospice patients have, I've had family members say, oh, they're hanging on until so and so gets here from Miami. And I'll just kind of laugh and think, no, that's not possible. They're about to die, but they hold on until that relative gets there from Miami. So even those of us that work in this space all the time, we're constantly reminded, you don't know everything. This
Yeah.
is a mystery. And so you just remain open and curious, and take every single thing that you encounter as a learning opportunity so that you can apply it next time. And I think that's part of it. Just remain open and curious until the very end.
Right. Because it has to be curious because we don't really know, do we? We don't.
No, no,
So it's a beautiful subject. It's a beautiful thing. Well, thank you very much today, very much for your conversation. And thank you for your participation in our group. I see that you're always involved with that and with people in the group. And that's really awesome. And if you want to just talk a little bit about more, anything else you want to discuss or touch base on any retreats or anything you want to go over before we end?
Well, so Diaspora Psychedelic Society in Jamaica is always available for retreats with plant medicine. I'm at Anitya Doula Services, and I live in Chicago now, but I am just a real advocate, and I can be helpful for people either remotely or also in the Chicago area, or like I said, I travel as well.
We have a question, if you don't mind asking this question. How can you explain about why and how psychedelics how they help people overcome fear of dying?
Right. So I would say that they reduce fear of dying. I think it takes work to overcome it completely. I don't know that we completely overcome it. But I think the ways that I've seen psychedelics reduce fear is that it simulates death. A lot of people who experience plant medicine retreats or ceremonies explain how they felt or they witnessed the death of their ego. And while that seems frightening, to actually experience it is altogether beautiful, or
Yeah.
can be. So I can only go by my own personal experiences. I had a psilocybin experience when I was in my 20s. Again, didn't really go into it with a fear of death. But it reiterated to me how there's nothing to be afraid of, that it's this peaceful, loving energy around you. And again, we can't control the circumstances sometimes of how we come to die, but
Right.
we can recognize that once death occurs, there is an overwhelming feeling of love. There is an overwhelming feeling of peace and serenity. And so then when I turned 50, I celebrated by going to an ayahuasca retreat. And so I experienced again just this connection. You know, we all know maybe on one level that we're all connected and that love is all that matters, that we're surrounded by love. But to actually experience ayahuasca, to experience that feeling,
Hmm.
it's altogether different. And so
Absolutely.
you know, on a visceral, cellular level that we're all connected. We've all got love. We came from love. We'll return to love. And so I think that experience is exactly what a lot of people experience, and that is there's nothing to be afraid of. That we're comforted and cared for by this energy that's bigger than us, and
Yeah.
it's going to carry us through. And the other thing that I want to say is, you know, at that retreat, the second night I didn't need the medicine. I felt like I got what I needed the first night, so
Right.
I was kind of like a volunteer, and I watched about 40 to 50 little miracles. All of these people at this ayahuasca retreat making peace with their childhood abusers, working through the trauma that either came on the battlefield or came from their childhood or came from their family, and how the medicine really allowed them to work through it and to come out the other side, go through integration and apply it to stay sober, to live with less fear, to deal with medicine resistant depression, to overcome the PTSD that was plaguing them on a daily basis. I mean, it takes work. You
Yeah.
have to integrate, you have to do other things in addition to this. But more people need to know that that's available to them in
Hmm.
a variety of different ways. And
Yes.
yeah, reach out and give me a call and let's talk about it. And we'll find a way. If you really want to reduce your fear about dying, we'll find a way to get that done.
Yeah. Because it's just a fear we have. And once you see that, and once you uncover that veil, it's just so beautiful. And
Yeah,
it's what we need. We just need to reconnect and connect back to ourselves
yeah,
and know that life is very much worth living. And it's just a beautiful thing. And
yeah,
just, people say it just in these chats right now. It's so important to have professionals in the spaces like we have with you and so many others that have joined our group. It's this word to get out there is just so important. And thank
yeah.
you so
There's another question that says, how did you become a death doula? And is there an educational path to follow? Every doula is different. There are lots of educational paths to follow. I will say that I loved my program at the University of Vermont. Their end-of-life doula program is phenomenal. So I recommend that. I think Going with Grace is another excellent, excellent educational program. And then I think it's really important to maybe talk to local hospices, see if they have training programs. If you're interested in different groups of people that you want to serve, like I serve the LGBTQ plus community, so I made sure to get certified as a queer informed doula, and I think that's important. So you know, and I also think joining an alliance, a professional alliance like INELDA or NIDA, is vital, so that you'll continue to learn the skills going forward that you need. And then also Diaspora Psychedelic Society in Jamaica, I have a program with them that educates death doulas who want to work with plant medicine as well.
much.
So there's
I
that
think
component.
Christina Caldwell's a part of that too, isn't she?
Yeah, she sure is. And yeah, and Rebecca's asking, do you get certified for that? So each program has their own certification. And yes, you can get certified by different groups. The different, like the community parts, yes, you can get certified at a, DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, from a local LGBTQ plus community group. And like there's just so many people who they have no idea that doulas are a thing. And then once you let them know, they get so excited and they say, yeah, we want you to come in and talk to our community. And then you kind of work through it from there and find out what different kind of classes you can even lead, workshops you can lead, that kind of spread the word and also educate people about end of life from different points of view. And you don't need to be a psychologist, and you don't need to be somebody previously involved in healthcare. I think a lot of us come at this from different backgrounds, and they're all helpful because you're going to meet all different kinds of people from different backgrounds. So I encourage everybody to call hospice and get trained. They'll give you training for free to become an educated volunteer, and then look into the different programs that are, kind of available at different prices in different locations. And yes, you all are more than welcome to reach out to me with questions anytime.
Absolutely. I still like this, and I'm still pondering back that question of why. When you said why, and I guess my question of why we die, my question I always ask is, what I always feared, what are people going to do if I'm gone? I mean, that would be my question I was asking myself. If I die, what is everybody going to do if I'm gone? Isn't that selfish in itself? So
no, I think, it's normal, right? You're being honest about there is a fear people have of just not existing. What does that even look like? And so, and it's really hard. And so the person who's dying is really worried about their loved ones.
Right.
And their loved ones are really worried about the person dying.
Right.
And so they just kind of go back and forth and back and forth. And that's why so many times when loved ones kind of lean over and whisper, we'll be okay. We'll miss you, but we'll be okay. And you can go. A lot of times that's what the person is waiting for. And then they go. They just want to be
I don't think I could do the job you do, because I'd be in tears all the time. That would be my biggest thing. So
yeah,
amazing.
People ask me all the time, like, isn't this so depressing? It's actually life affirming. And the best way to be with someone who's dying and not bring that on yourself is to just remember, when you're doing this work, that this isn't about you. That's not your mom. That's not your son. That's not your little girl. That's not your grandmother. This is somebody who is dying, and they need your support. So be mindful, be in that room, and let everything else go. And that it's a constant practice, right? It takes practice every day to be able to just be mindful and in that room with that person and not think about yourself, not think about your loved ones. And if you can do that, then you get to experience this sacred privilege of supporting somebody at a most difficult time, and being called on to do whatever it is they're asking you to do.
Beautiful. Great conversation. I never thought we could get so deep with this, but it's really cool. Really cool.
Yeah, I'm glad we're able to have this talk. We need more and more of them all over the place, so that people feel comfortable to ask those tender questions and work through those awkward, kind of uncomfortable moments with loved ones, to get to be able to give them this beautiful gift of making your plans and making your decisions so they don't have to.
Yeah, because I think we all have this in common, because we all pretty much know somebody that dies, or we're all going to die. So it's something we all have in common. So it's something we should really be talking about a lot more.
I agree. So you invite me back anytime. I'm happy to be here.
Thanks, Catherine.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Much love to you. Thank you for this conversation today. I really appreciate you.
You got it. Be well.